episode of the Ripple Intent podcast. My name is John Grant, and I'm here with my host, Kyle and Jon.
Hey everybody, it's Kyle.
Ripple Intent is a nonprofit organization which is dedicated to bringing a more human-centric focus at work. We are changing the way we work. And for this episode, our guest today is Meredith Meyers. Meredith, please introduce yourself for our listeners.
Hi, I'm Meredith Meyers. I do strategy and business development for Cunningham. We're an architecture firm, and the studio I get to work with is our healthcare studio. There's probably more to say and less for that matter, so always could be less here.
Well, we're going to ask you to say a lot more today. We love your insights and all of the effort that you've been putting in to help build the Ripple Intent community, especially in SoCal. So we're excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks. It's been fun. Thanks for asking me to be a part of that. It's kind of neat to see it evolve and grow in my local area. So happy for it.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey with you, Meredith. We've been working on stuff with Ripple Intent for a long time now. You've been heavily involved, and we connected and became good friends through the whole effort and things that we do, and brought and helped establish a community in San Diego and LA now, and who knows where that's going to take us in the future. But really appreciate your passion, your energy, and dedication in making this work and stick and grow and build.
So let's jump right into our topic for today. So we're going to dig further into trust. So we've talked about this a little bit in a couple of episodes. And for our repeated listeners, you've heard us talk about Charles Feltman's Thin Book of Trust. It's a great read, and it's a thin book, so it's quick and a lot of simple to grasp concepts. So today we really want to focus on one of the four distinctions, sincerity. So just to set the stage, Charles Feltman describes sincerity as that you're honest, right? That is the quality that you say what you mean and do what you say, and that your actions align with your words. So we find this really interesting. There are some people who are more inclined towards sincerity than others. And Meredith, I'm really, I'm fascinated by you in general. One of the things I love about you is one of your top 5 strengths is woo, right? And so for our listeners who may not be really in tune with Clifton's strengths, maybe can you share your interpretation of woo?
Tough because I want to be slightly subdued when I explain what I think woo is, but part of woo itself is to have kind of this energy and enthusiasm and bring that to some of the things that you do. Obviously there's a lot more to it, but it's kind of that concept of really maybe having a specific feeling about the things that you're doing and maybe trying to get others to feel that same sense or share it with them somehow through just having it as one of your strengths.
No, for sure, right? And woo, right, the acronym is win over others. It is something I don't have. It is not in my top strengths, and so I love kind of seeing how it shows up for you. And I'm bringing it up because there's this interesting correlation to sincerity with woo, in that there's potential with woo for people to kind of, you're dancing through a social situation like a butterfly, right? Where you can connect with people really quickly, and then you're very comfortable moving on. And so I actually have relator in my top 10, and for me, sometimes that becomes challenging because I can perceive the woo as a lack of sincerity. And so I would love, you've shared with us a little bit that the sincerity is aligned for you with woo, and I'd love for you to kind of share that with us, talk about how it shows up and what it looks like.
It's kind of an interesting concept, right? Because I think the woo is just naturally there, right? You kind of can't, I feel like, I've heard this before and it's sort of just true, is that you kind of can't orchestrate how your strengths are going to show up, right? You take the test in good faith, honestly, sincerely, and your strengths emerge, right? It's proven how that is done with Clifton Strengths. Now, it is strange to think that I personally feel like I do have these two sides to me, which one is the woo, and it's just natural, right? So it is sincere by its very nature. But the other side to it, I think, is I won't do things that don't interest me, right? And so it's going to be there no matter what, right? And so that passion, maybe that enthusiasm is there because I'm doing something that I enjoy and that I can share a genuine and sincere passion for with others. So maybe that makes sense. I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about it. The flip side to it, which is kind of interesting, is I don't know if this is just how I am as a person or something I learned through my dad. He taught me it doesn't pay to lie because then you have to remember all of your lies. So I think that made me, it just makes more work, right? So I wish maybe that was not the reason he told me not to do it, but that's what stuck. And the reality is I do therefore have a difficult time with that balcony for the woo, right? I don't want people to see it as being insincere, but I think I'm an interesting, anomaly in certain ways whereby because that woo is so natural for the things I'm passionate about and because I get to do the things I'm passionate about, it's always sincere, right? I think you guys know me. I don't even have a poker face. So I can't really do a woo for something that is not something I really truly believe in or someone or, right, something that I can kind of champion in that way. So it's actually strangely it bothers me because I don't want ever to be perceived as someone who's not sharing authenticity, sincerity, right? I don't know exactly how to explain it even better because it's an interesting sort of paradox, I think.
Well, you withhold the trust from people who don't have that same level of sincerity. When you see people who are BSing their way through building relationships or working a crowd or just trying to get the card out there, doing business development or whatever it may be, they're out there, they're playing the game, they're going through the motions, and you pick up on that real quick and go, they're fake or they're not sincere. And you immediately cut off all trust. And for those of you who are listening, she's over here nodding, by the way.
Well, I'm wondering, is it me or is it you? Because you've also expressed that same reticence with people who do the job I do, right? Sometimes I feel like this business development has gotten a bad rap because of the things that you just mentioned, right? But I'm not here to waste your time or your time. And it doesn't matter, right? To me, who I'm talking to, there does have to be that same element of sincerity that I latch onto, right? That makes me want to have a relationship with you, no matter who you are and no matter what you do. And I know you've heard me say this before, I'm very fortunate to work for an organization that actually is very big into strengths. And we've been going through all these different modules and, we've been looking a lot more closely at whose strengths are whose, right? And where do they fall? And how can we complement one another, right? Like you mentioned earlier, Jon, relator versus woo, right? Where do we find common ground where we could make a stronger team if we're trying to get something done by utilizing our strengths that may be opposite, right? To some degree. So it is, it's interesting for me to think about, unfortunately, sometimes that sort of bad name that business development has gotten, because I think you can do it a lot of different ways whereby you are being authentic to yourself, your organization is thankful to have you because of the things that you bring, and that you get to kind of choose who you work with because you have similar values, right? So we don't want to work with anyone, whether you're on the consultant side, whether you're an owner, whether you're a contractor, who isn't going to be part of a larger team that actually has a common goal of getting something finished and done well together.
You think that the folks that you work with share that sincerity is valued very, very high, and that's why you work well within the organization, because you all place a high value on that aspect of trust?
Oh, I do. I absolutely do. We have kind of new leadership, right? And our CEO, our CFO, and our COO all came to San Diego last week. And we got to sit down together in San Diego in a conference room, and we had some presentations and we had some conversations, right? And, you can just kind of feel it, right? Or the conversations naturally just sort of go there, right? And to me, that's really neat, is to have leadership that says, we want to work that way, right? There's a lot of organizations that are still looking at the bottom line only, and they will do whatever they need to meet a bottom line. I think we've seen that sometimes that doesn't go very well, because you miss the human factor, right? You miss what it takes to nurture people to get you to that goal.
Sure, the whole means to an end. And
right, like you're billable at X dollars, so that's what you better do all the time, is be billable. We won't care about you. We don't care that you have a family. We don't care that you might need to leave at a certain time to pick up your son. We don't care, right? If we don't care about you, you're disposable to us, and you also are probably not that interested in helping us make our bottom line. There's a value that you bring, and when you feel like people care for you, you're going to want to be there, and you're going to want to work that hard.
So you mentioned that the conversations just kind of go that way in your organization, right? Or sitting down with those leaders. What does that actually look like? I'm thinking that we have people listening who have no clue, like you may feel it, like you mentioned, right? But let's say I want to go and put it into practice. I'm curious, how, can you dig in deeper? Tell us more. Like maybe there's a story out of there. What do some of those conversations actually look like?
Well, it's fascinating to me because I've worked for a number of organizations in my career where it wasn't like that. And I didn't know that I didn't have to be there, right? If I am in a situation where I don't feel valued, I don't feel respected, there's no amount of money or no amount of health insurance or whatever that's valuable enough to stay in a situation like that. Now, that's a whole other story for another day, right? But when you find maybe you've had that journey, and maybe you have to go through some of those negative places and experiences and then do some kind of, growing, learning, whatever, and take that away to move forward, it's amazing. Maybe it's, paying your dues or, balance or any number of different things that might take you from a place that was a little bit more negative to a place that's very positive. And I am certainly thankful every single day that I landed here, that I am viewed as a leader. I am valued. That is nurtured. I mean, in the past, it was like the complete opposite, where it was pretty easy to push me down and hold me down, and I felt like that's where I belonged. And so to be able to find that, it's a really strange thing that's very difficult to explain, but I feel like sometimes people just find each other. And just the same, you find the people you want to work with, right? Just the same, right? I don't know. I don't know how we all ended up in that room, but obviously somebody there has, or everybody there has some value for what it is that we're able to share. And it is really helping us to be better at what we do and be vested in what we do and respect one another every single day.
That's really awesome and quite a blessing to be in that situation. I'm wondering, as I hear you describe this and the heartfelt passion behind it, what happens when you go out in the community? Because your role takes you out in the community quite often. I see you everywhere. And online and all of the different places you go and the people that you connect with. What happens when you cross paths with people who are on the opposite end of the trust spectrum when it comes to sincerity, where their highest value distinction is the opposite, whatever the opposite. Let me change the question. They place the lowest value on giving, extending, and receiving trust, on sincerity, which means they often say things but don't follow through. which you, of course, put a tremendous amount of value on, and work with people who have a tremendous. Now, what's curious about the way I say that is it sounds like there are a bunch of evil people out there, and that's not the point. The point is, when it comes to the trust spectrum, there are folks who put a lot more value on competence or on the caring aspect. And sincerity is kind of a bonus, just in the way they internalize the ranking system. But yours is high, so I'm curious, when you cross paths with people where sincerity is at the other end of the spectrum, what does that look like? How does that play out?
Well, sometimes the should not tell a lie because you can't, because it's obvious. It's a little too obvious, right? When you do run into people who you maybe don't jibe with or you don't share the same values. It's a little difficult. Sometimes you can see it all over my face or hear it in the words I say or some combination of the two. It's a little more of a either don't engage because there are enough other people there with whom I can spend the time and with whom I want to spend the time because the values are more shared. Or it's a bit of a little wave across the room, hey, how's it going? And then go find the people that you do feel that you can relate to and or who relate to you and with whom you can have a little bit more of a meaningful interaction. I don't know. I mean, it's ironic to be saying that, right? Because we're talking about a few different things, right? Like the nature of the business sometimes that I do is to, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And, it's very surface, right? And it's very, I think also things have changed a bit in society, but whereby like it used to be like, don't mix business and pleasure. And I think nowadays people are closer. We're all a little bit more sort of friends just by nature. Maybe pandemic changed the way we work and when we saw each other's dogs and kids and whatever, there was more of that just came to us naturally. But in the past you'd sit there like, hey, so, right? And I could fill in the blank with any number of banal topics that we could ask, right? Like, and I'm not going to. But I could also come over and immediately we could sort of we don't live in the same place, but we've seen each other enough. Even this morning, we had a ripple intent, great one, in a new location. It wasn't, hey, good morning, how's it going? It was like, oh my gosh, I hate those things too, or whatever it was, where we could just immediately and naturally connect on something. Right?
We love bonding
Not those
over
things.
hatred.
It wasn't. It wasn't that. It was something that was an inefficiency, all right, right? It was something that was like a funny thing that we both immediately sort of said, I wish that, this was different because, I feel wasteful, right? Oh, I get it. I know how you feel. Oh, and it's a quick, immediate, almost like reunion type of a thing. Like, hey, how's it going? And, we pick up where we left off and the communication and the interactions are organic, right? It's not forced. It's not, I don't do well with that, right? And there are a number of people who do the job I do, and that's what they do, and that's okay, right? Maybe that works for them. It doesn't for me. So that's also where when I feel that whatever kind of conversation or topic is not sincere, it's awkward. That's when it becomes awkward for me. So it's kind of more about just having a flow and a relationship and a bond or a connection, I think.
Well, so then how does that bond, then what is the impact on the trust you have in that relationship? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think that actually becomes, it's a little bit, of maybe that strange sort of fortuitous, right, people coming together that I was talking about before, kind of with our leadership and, our people inside our firm, is that it's almost becomes part of the equation. I feel like you build the bond, right, because you've been authentic. So maybe your authenticity and your sincerity are different, right? Maybe you are not sincere as a person, but you're authentic because that's what you know, right? Just the same for me. I need to have that real sincerity almost to a fault. Again, like you said, how do you deal with it when those people are there? How do you kind of, right? So to the point though that it's part of the transaction, right? Like I think if you and I feel the same about the things that we hate, no, just kidding, but about a certain thing, right? And we both kind of toe that line and we can have that conversation, then we've built some kind of a foundation together that where we start interacting and transacting in a different manner, whereby you know what you can expect from me, and hopefully and vice versa, right? I mean, we all know we're going to show up here at X time because we've committed to this meeting. Or maybe we know that one person isn't that good at that, so maybe they won't be here, or they forgot to respond and say they weren't coming, or that they were tentative, or right? Like it's sort of maybe a reliability or something over time that you kind of establish because you've gotten to know and understand the people you're interacting with a little better.
Do people have to earn your trust, or do you trust them and then they lose it over time? Where do you start?
It's a mixed bag for me, and I wish that I knew, honestly, because I do think there it is again. Honestly, it's always honestly. Let me tell you. For
Very
some
sincere.
reason, that's a good filler.
Very sincere.
Let me tell you the truth for once. No, but like it's a mixed bag. There are a lot of times that I actually someone will show up, and I will believe them to be a certain way. And then I'll learn later that I was not, and they got the total benefit of the doubt, right? And then I'll learn later that maybe that wasn't the way that they were, and my initial perception was wrong. Or it's easy for the trust to disintegrate based on, and maybe part of that had to do with that initial judgment. Ironically enough, I actually think I give people a lot more credit up front than maybe what they're capable of delivering. And I'll tell you, it's kind of I've learned that personally I have very high expectations for myself, and that therefore they sort of get, unfortunately, like projected onto other people. So the expectation that I have of others, I think, is also, I probably have even higher of myself. But it doesn't mean I'm always fair about what I can expect from other people, because maybe they can't deliver it. Maybe I gave them too high I set it too high of a bar for them up front, or it's me projecting onto them my own expectation, and then they're unfairly required to meet it. Or I just believe that people should sort of do the right thing and be a certain way, and I don't know.
Do you ever explain that to people, or are they left guessing which one you're in at the moment?
If they listen to this podcast, they'll know. And then
Well, I hear your responsibility strength coming out in that statement, because I have the exact same with mine. It shows up the same way, right? So, but what I'm hearing from you is you're more inclined to extend that trust to other people and give them that opportunity to meet you, right? To step up to where you are, and then they either help maintain it or they don't, right? And then you then move them outside the circle of trust, right? They have an opportunity to stay in, or they can choose to exit, or you may kick them to the door.
Maybe they've exited, maybe not by their choice, yeah. Mm-hmm. However, that said, sometimes that's not entirely fair either, because again, if you place a higher level of, without knowing it, of that expectation on other people, that's not always positive, right? Because it's that, again, that sort of balcony and basement concept, right? You probably know them offhand, but the sort of, basement of responsibility could be, and I don't know for sure, that you might place some of those same expectations on other people, and if they don't meet them, then, and I don't know again.
Oh, 100%.
They better meet my expectations.
Okay. Glad to hear. We can stay friends until you break the trust, John.
That is a brutal double-edged sword. Right?
It's too bad to some degree, because I feel like I could extend maybe a little bit more grace or compassion. Maybe because they're not like that, I should look at that and say, maybe that's not their jam, and maybe I need to kind of loosen up and say, well, it's not, right? And everyone's got their their pluses, minus strengths, whatever.
How
do we deal with that? How do we become more patient with other people and accept those things that you feel they should be at a higher level?
How conscious is that mindset for you?
It's very conscious right now. Every day, everything I do, not always. But I try. I feel like I try. I also do want to be fair, but I also have high expectations. We'll just be honest. And I feel lucky again to work at a place that values what I bring, and that I feel steps up and does the right thing. And we have all these great sort of mission, vision, values that we actually have really used to formulate our strategic plan. And one of them is take care of each other, take care of the world, take care of each other, right? That's in our kind of day to day. But I don't think that was born out of someone coming up with it because that's the right thing to do. I think they actually probably took a look at who we were already and used that as a way to sort of put that into tangible words. And then we can always sort of refer to it and go, oh yeah, that's right. We do that.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because those value type words, right, like trust or let's take care of each other, are these intangible concepts that for some people it's like, hey, that's a great idea. Oh, sure, it's a lovely aspirational statement. But what does that then, I'm really curious now, what does that then look like for you guys in a tangible, day-to-day, evidence-based basis?
Okay, so we'll just use, you're our client or you're our consultant, right? You bring value to us. We've chosen you to do the job that you do as our consultant because we trust you and we know that you're there to do the thing that you're good at, right? And so in that sort of transaction or interaction, it's a given, right? And then there are other things that we do. We do a lot of volunteering. We do things we make cards for, kids in the hospital or seniors, right? Because we want to. There's someone in some office that says, hey, let's do this. And then there's a group of people who decide, we want to do that, right? And there's also a strange amount of humility, maybe to a fault, inside of our organization, because I think people just naturally want to do those things. Now, that said, we owe our clients, right, the best solutions that we can offer, right? We're going to help you solve this problem. It's messy, it's sticky, at least in our studio, which is healthcare, right? It is really messy. You're going in, especially in California, you're going into an occupied hospital and you're going to fix something and you're going to deal with a whole set of very stringent codes, right? OSHPAD or whatever, right? And there are a million different things that need to be taken care of. We will figure that out because we want to. Not because we owe it to you as our client. We don't owe you that. We do it because we want to do it. And we do it, we work with the users, we work with, right, a lot of different people because we honestly want to solve whatever problem that is. Now, again, the consultants that we bring in, you're an extension of our team. You don't work for us, you work with us. It's just a mindset.
So I definitely hear that tying into that competence aspect. I love as maybe a takeaway for folks, let's even come back in that sincerity and that care component. Is there something you can share as a takeaway for our listeners, how to actually put that into practice?
I kind of feel like be true to yourself, right? And therefore it then happens inside the work that you do and the hopefully at home. It extends to multiple places. Whatever that authenticity looks like, I think, I keep tying that to that sincerity, right? I feel like if you're being authentic, you're being your sincere self. And that's what you can bring. And I guess part of it too is the people that you bring it to, they can decide if they want, I hate to say it, what you're selling or not, right? I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek, right? A bit facetious, because that's not actually, you shouldn't really be selling anything when you're bringing your real true self to whatever the interaction is. And you may be right for some people and some interactions, and maybe you don't jibe. And that's okay. There might be someone else who's out there for you and who you're more right for.
No, I like that. Kyle, any takeaways for our listeners from what you're hearing today?
Yeah, don't lie.
You don't want to have to remember all those lies.
It's a great observation to see and talk to somebody who puts that sincerity component of trust at the very top of the list. And to think back of the interactions where people don't have that at the top of the list and they're trying to have a conversation, make small talk, close a deal, whatever it may be, and start either exaggerating or going out of bounds or being inauthentic because they're putting whatever it is in front of them ahead of that component of trust. It makes me think, are they doing it because they're bad people? Are they doing that because of other drivers, of other motivations, of other environmental factors? And do they deserve a bit of grace or patience or tolerance in the moment, as opposed to, oh, you're off my list? And it's got me thinking, where am I judging folks in that way, as harsh as I am, and am I doing that intentionally or unconsciously? You got me thinking on this one. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sitting in a similar spot. I think, one of the things that's really resonating with me is, how do we communicate how important sincerity is to us? It's a place that not that I'm insincere or that I'm, in the lying category, but I have to be mindful, because it's not, I don't go there first, because I probably feel like I just naturally show up being sincere. So I have to be thoughtful about other people's sincerity meters, right? And what that looks like. So how do I communicate, or how do I help them communicate how important that is in terms of our relationship and building trust? So, Meredith, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us today. This has been a great conversation. I think it's really important for us to make sure we really look at these different distinctions of trust and how they impact everyone as we learn to improve the places we work.
Well, thanks for having me. And as you know, trust is not easy to define, so maybe that's how to do it, right? You look at it from the different aspects that make it a little bit more tangible for you.
For sure. Well, listeners, we need to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us again. You can find us online at rippleintent.org. Come join us for an event in a location near you, and we will see you on the next episode.